Upon returning unexpectedly from an international trip, a millionaire finds his fiancée about to flee with his twin daughters. In the bedroom, an open suitcase reveals money, forged documents, and photos with an unknown man. What once seemed like a perfect life collapses under buried secrets and a devastating betrayal. But the truth behind the escape goes far beyond a scheme and may break everyone's heart. The private jet touched down at Denver International Airport at precisely 11:47 p.m. on a cold November evening. Michael Harrison stepped out into the crisp Colorado air, his designer suit wrinkled from the 14-hour flight from Singapore, but his mind sharp with satisfaction. The telecommunications deal he'd just closed would make Harrison Industries the largest provider in the Asian market, a triumph that had taken 3 grueling weeks of negotiations. As the black sedan wound through the familiar streets of Cherry Hills Village, Michael's thoughts drifted to home. 3 weeks felt like an eternity away from his 7-year-old twin daughters, Emma and Grace. Their mother, Sarah, had passed away from complications during childbirth, leaving Michael to raise the girls alone until 2 years ago, when Diana entered their lives like a guardian angel. Diana Matthews had been everything he'd dreamed of in a partner. Intelligent, compassionate, beautiful, with an MBA from Northwestern and a background in non-profit work. She'd met the girls during a charity event at the Denver Art Museum, where she'd been coordinating fundraising efforts for underprivileged children. The twins had gravitated toward her immediately, drawn to her genuine warmth and the way she listened to their stories about school and their pet hamster, Mr. Whiskers. The mansion's circular driveway was illuminated by soft landscape lighting as the sedan pulled up to the front entrance. Michael dismissed his driver and stood, for a moment, breathing in the mountain air. Tomorrow would bring the announcement of the Singapore deal, board meetings and media interviews, but tonight belonged to his family. He'd already planned a surprise weekend trip to Aspen, complete with horseback riding and hot chocolate by the fireplace. Using his key, Michael entered quietly through the front door, expecting the house to be silent at this late hour. The girls would be asleep, and Diana had mentioned in their last video call that she'd been feeling under the weather lately, something she attributed to stress from her latest charity project. He'd brought gifts from Singapore, small jade bracelets for the twins and a silk scarf for Diana that had reminded him of her eyes. As he climbed the marble staircase, carrying his briefcase and the gift bag, Michael noticed a faint light coming from beneath his bedroom door. Perhaps Diana was reading, unable to sleep. He'd surprise her gently. Maybe they could talk about the deal over a glass of wine from his private collection. But as he approached the partially open door, sounds from within made him pause. Not the gentle rustling of someone reading, but the hurried movements of someone packing. Confused, Michael stepped closer and peered through the crack in the door. What he saw made his blood freeze. Diana stood with her back to the door, urgently stuffing items into a large black suitcase spread open on their king-sized bed. But these weren't her usual clothes. Stacks of cash were visible, along with official-looking documents, several passports and photographs. Next to the suitcase lay a manila envelope and what appeared to be a driver's license with Diana's photo, but a different name that he couldn't quite make out from his position. Michael's hand instinctively gripped the doorframe. As he watched the woman he'd planned to marry in 3 months, methodically organizing what looked like an escape kit. His mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. The Diana he knew was meticulous about organization, but this was different. This was the behavior of someone preparing to disappear completely from their current life. But what truly shattered his world was what he noticed next. On the floor beside the bed were 2 small backpacks, the kind the twins used for overnight stays at friends' houses. Diana was carefully folding Emma's favorite purple pajamas, the ones with the dancing unicorns, and Grace's beloved stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, which she'd had since she was a baby. Diana moved with the same maternal care she'd always shown the girls, smoothing the fabric with tender precision, but the context made Michael's stomach lurch with a sickening realization. The twins. She was planning to take his daughters. Michael pressed himself against the wall outside the door, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain Diana would hear it. 2 years of memories flashed through his mind like a broken film reel, Diana helping Emma with her homework at the kitchen island, both of them giggling over math problems that seemed impossible until Diana broke them down into simple steps. Diana braiding Grace's hair before dance recitals, her patient fingers working through the tangles while humming soft lullabies. Family movie nights, where the girls would fall asleep between him and Diana on the couch, feeling safe and loved in their cocoon of warmth. Had it all been an elaborate deception? Every tender moment, every shared laugh, every time she'd kissed his daughters goodnight and whispered that she loved them. Through the crack in the door, he watched Diana pause in her packing to pick up a framed photograph from the nightstand. It was from last summer's vacation to Yellowstone, all four of them grinning beside Old Faithful, the twins making silly faces while Diana and Michael laughed behind them. For a moment, her composed facade cracked, and Michael saw something that looked like genuine anguish cross her features before she carefully placed the photo in one of the children's backpacks, treating it like a precious treasure rather than evidence of her deception. His business instincts, honed by years of high-stakes negotiations and corporate crisis management, kicked in. Michael quietly retreated down the hallway to his home office, his mind working frantically despite the emotional chaos threatening to overwhelm him. Whatever was happening, he couldn't confront Diana immediately, not with the girls sleeping just down the hall, innocent and unaware that their world might be about to collapse. He needed information, needed to understand the scope of what he was dealing with before making any moves that might put Emma and Grace at risk. The heavy oak door of his office provided a barrier between him and the unthinkable scene he'd just witnessed. Settling behind his mahogany desk, Michael opened his laptop and began what would become the most important investigation of his life. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed, but his resolve strengthened with each search. He started with the basics, using his corporate security contacts to search for Diana Matthews in every database accessible to him. What he found in the next hour would challenge everything he thought he knew about the woman who had become a mother to his children. Diana Matthews, as he knew her, barely existed in any official capacity beyond 2 years ago, right around the time she'd entered their lives. Her Northwestern MBA couldn't be verified. Through the university's alumni database, which he found strange since the school was usually meticulous about their records. The non-profit organization where she'd claimed to work, Children's Future Foundation, had no record of her employment, though they confirmed they had indeed hosted the charity event where they'd met. Even more disturbing, the address she'd given as her previous residence in Chicago showed no history of her tenancy according to public records. It was as if Diana Matthews had materialized out of thin air, specifically to enter his and his daughter's lives. Michael leaned back in his leather chair, staring at the computer screen that seemed to mock him with its lack of concrete information about the woman sleeping upstairs. Or rather, the woman who should be sleeping, but was instead preparing to disappear with his most precious possessions. A soft chime from his phone interrupted his spiraling thoughts, a text message from Diana, sent just minutes ago. "Can't sleep, darling. So excited you're home. The girls have been counting down the days. See you in the morning. Love you." The normalcy of the message, the casual endearment, the reference to the twins' excitement about his return, all of it felt surreal given what he'd just witnessed. Michael stared at the words, trying to reconcile the caring woman who had sent this loving message with the person upstairs methodically packing escape supplies and his daughter's belongings. As dawn approached, Michael heard movement from upstairs. Diana was awake early, which wasn't unusual since she often rose before the girls to prepare their breakfast and pack their school lunches with little notes of encouragement. But given what he'd witnessed, every sound now carried sinister implications. The familiar creak of the floorboards above his office, usually comforting in its domestic routine, now made him tense with apprehension. From his office window, Michael could see the garden where he'd often watched Diana and the twins plant flowers together each spring. Just last month, they'd prepared the flower beds for winter, Diana patiently teaching the girls how to protect the roots from the harsh Colorado cold. Emma had insisted on leaving markers for each plant so they'd remember where everything was planted come spring, and Diana had helped her make little signs with colorful drawings and careful lettering. Would Diana be here to see those flowers bloom again, or was she planning to disappear long before the snow melted? Another text message arrived. "Good morning, sweetheart. I know you're probably still sleeping off the jet lag, but I'm taking the girls to school early today. Emma has a special presentation about butterflies for her science class, and Grace volunteered to help set up the art display. We'll be back by 4. Dinner at 6. I'm making your favorite lasagna. Love you." Michael stared at the message, noting how perfectly it aligned with Diana's usual attention to the girls' school activities. She never missed Emma's presentations or Grace's art projects, always finding ways to support their interests and celebrate their achievements. The message sounded completely normal, like hundreds of others she'd sent during his business trips, keeping him connected to his daughter's daily lives. But he'd seen the suitcases, the cash, the passports with different names. He'd witnessed her packing his daughter's belongings like they were never coming home. From the kitchen below, he could hear the familiar sounds of breakfast being prepared and the girls' excited voices as they discovered Daddy was home. Their squeals of delight when Diana presumably told them about his return made his chest tight with emotion. The normalcy of it all felt like a cruel joke, like watching a beautiful painting while knowing it was about to be destroyed. Standing at his office window, Michael made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. Instead of confronting Diana immediately and risking an explosive scene in front of the children, he would investigate further. He would discover the truth about the woman he'd entrusted with his most precious possessions, his daughter's hearts and safety. He would find out who Diana really was, what she wanted, and what had driven her to this point. But as he watched Diana load the twins into her white BMW SUV 30 minutes later, both girls waving up at his office window with bright smiles and backpacks slung over their shoulders, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Whatever Diana was planning, whatever had driven her to prepare for such an elaborate disappearance, it was happening soon. The careful way she'd packed their belongings, the cash, the multiple passports, all of it suggested a plan that was ready to be executed. The Singapore deal that had felt so important just hours ago now seemed meaningless compared to the mystery unfolding in his own home. Michael Harrison, a man who'd built an empire through careful planning and strategic thinking, found himself facing the most crucial challenge of his life, one where the stakes weren't measured in dollars, but in the safety and future of his beloved daughters. As the BMW disappeared around the corner, Michael reached for his secure phone line to call Marcus Rodriguez, his head of security, and someone who'd helped him navigate corporate crises before. This investigation would require resources, discretion, and expertise beyond his own capabilities. He needed answers, and he needed them before Diana returned with Emma and Grace this afternoon. He had no idea that by evening, everything he thought he understood about love, trust, and the woman who had become his daughter's mother would be forever changed, leading to revelations that would test the very foundations of what family meant. Marcus Rodriguez had been Michael's head of security for 8 years, a former FBI agent whose discretion and efficiency had proven invaluable during corporate espionage attempts and hostile takeovers. When Michael called him at 6 a.m. requesting an immediate and confidential background investigation, Marcus asked no questions, only how quickly Michael needed results. By noon, Marcus sat across from Michael in the soundproof conference room of Harrison Industries' executive floor, a thick file folder between them. The contents would reshape everything Michael thought he knew about Diana Matthews. "Her real name is Diana Patricia Wilson," Marcus began, his voice steady but his expression grave. "She's been married for 12 years to a man named David Wilson, and they have a 9-year-old son named Anthony." Michael's coffee cup remained frozen halfway to his lips as Marcus continued. 8 years ago, Diana and David were involved in a sophisticated financial manipulation scheme targeting wealthy individuals. They would establish romantic relationships, gain access to financial information, and systematically drain accounts over extended periods. They were investigated by federal authorities, but disappeared before charges could be filed. The photographs Marcus spread across the table showed a different Diana, younger, her hair darker, standing next to a tall man with cold eyes outside a courthouse in Miami. Michael recognized her smile, but everything else felt foreign. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. Their son Anthony was diagnosed with a severe congenital heart condition 3 years ago. The medical expenses have been overwhelming, and recent records show his condition has deteriorated significantly. He needs immediate surgical intervention that costs upward of $2 million. Michael set down his coffee cup, his hand trembling slightly. And Diana? What's her current medical status? Marcus hesitated before answering. She was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 6 months ago. Her prognosis is limited. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of Denver traffic 30 floors below. Michael stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows, processing the revelation that the woman he loved, the woman who'd become a mother to his daughters, was facing her own mortality while desperately trying to save her child. Where is David? Wilson now? That's where it gets complicated, Marcus replied, opening another section of the file. He's been pressuring Diana to accelerate their original timeline. Our surveillance indicates he's become increasingly unstable, demanding immediate access to your financial assets. He wants to leave the country with both the money and your daughters as leverage. Michael's blood ran cold. As leverage for what? Insurance. If Diana's condition worsens, or if she has second thoughts about the plan, having Emma and Grace ensures her compliance. But here's what's interesting, Marcus leaned forward. Our audio surveillance of their recent meetings suggests Diana is refusing to involve your daughters beyond using them as initial cover for her disappearance. She wants to leave them behind. Surveillance? You've been watching her? Since this morning. Michael, you need to know that David Wilson is planning to force the issue tonight. He's given Diana an ultimatum. Execute their plan immediately or he'll take matters into his own hands. Michael stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, Denver stretched out like a model city, organized and predictable, unlike the chaos now engulfing his life. What exactly is their plan? Diana has been systematically transferring smaller amounts from your accounts over the past 6 months, nothing large enough to trigger automatic alerts. Tonight, she's supposed to initiate a final transfer of $12 million to an offshore account, then disappear with the children and meet David at a private airfield outside Colorado Springs. The weight of betrayal settled over Michael like a physical force. Every tender moment, every shared laugh, every time Diana had tucked his daughters into bed and kissed their foreheads, all of it had been orchestrated around this ultimate deception. But, Marcus continued, there's something else you should know. Diana has been documenting everything, keeping a detailed record of her interactions with your daughters, their routines, their preferences, their fears and dreams. It reads less like surveillance notes and more like what? Like a mother's journal. Michael, I think somewhere along the way, Diana's feelings for those girls became genuine. The question is whether that's enough to change her course. Michael returned to his chair, his mind racing through possibilities. Can we stop the financial transfers? Already done. I've had our cybersecurity team place temporary holds on all major accounts pending verification of transactions. Any attempt to move significant funds will trigger immediate alerts. And David? Wilson? Under surveillance. He's currently at a motel near the airport, growing more agitated by the hour. He's made several calls to Diana demanding updates. Michael checked his watch. 3:30 p.m. In a few hours, Diana would pick up the girls from school and bring them home for what might be their last normal evening together. Unless he acted. I want to hear these recordings of Diana and David's conversations. Marcus activated a small digital device. The audio quality was clear enough to make out every word. Diana, we've been planning this for 2 years. Anthony's condition is worsening, daily. I know, David, I know, but Emma and Grace, they trust me, they love me. They're not our children. They're tools, Diana. Means to an end. They call me Mom, David. When Grace has nightmares, she comes to my room. When Emma struggles with her math homework, she asks for my help. These aren't just random children anymore. You're losing sight of what matters. Our son is dying while you play house with some rich man's kids. There was a long pause before Diana's voice returned, smaller, more fragile. I'm dying too, David, and maybe I want to use whatever time I have left to be something other than a criminal. Michael felt his chest tighten as he heard the genuine anguish in Diana's voice. If you don't follow through tonight, I'll take those girls myself and use them to get what we need. Michael Harrison will pay anything to get his daughters back safely. You promised you wouldn't hurt them. I promised a lot of things, Diana, but promises don't pay for Anthony's surgery. The recording ended, leaving Michael and Marcus in heavy silence. What do you recommend? Michael asked finally. Confront her. Tonight, before David loses. Patience completely, but be prepared for anything. A desperate person with nothing left to lose can be unpredictable. Michael nodded, his decision crystallizing. I want additional security stationed around the house tonight, and I want David Wilson detained if he comes anywhere near my property. Already arranged. As evening approached, Michael sat in his home office waiting. He'd sent his usual car service away and dismissed the household staff early. Tonight would be just him, Diana, and the twins, one way or another. The truth would surface. He heard Diana's BMW in the driveway at 5:45 p.m., followed by the excited chatter of Emma and Grace as they burst through the front door. Daddy, Daddy, you're home! They rushed to his office, launching themselves into his arms with the enthusiasm that had made every business trip worthwhile. We missed you so much, Grace whispered into his neck. Diana said you brought us presents from Singapore, Emma added, her eyes bright with anticipation. Over their heads, Michael saw Diana standing in the doorway, her face carefully composed, but her eyes betraying an emotional storm. She looked exhausted, like someone carrying an impossible weight. Girls, why don't you go wash up for dinner? I need to talk to Diana about something. After the twins bounded upstairs, Michael and Diana faced each other across the office that had witnessed so many important moments in his life. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. You know, she said simply. It wasn't a question. I know about David Wilson. I know about Anthony's condition. I know about your diagnosis. And I know about tonight's plan. Diana's carefully maintained facade crumbled. She sank into the leather chair across from his desk, her hands shaking as she covered her face. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. When I first approached you at that charity event, it was supposed to be simple. Get close, gain trust, take what we needed for Anthony's medical expenses, and disappear. But Emma and Grace... But you fell in love with them. I fell in love with all of you, Diana said, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. With the girls, with you, with the life we built together. These past 2 years have been the happiest of my life, and I've ruined everything. Michael leaned forward. Anthony needs surgery. Immediately. We have maybe 2 weeks before his condition becomes inoperable. And your prognosis? Diana's laugh was bitter. 4 to 6 months, according to my oncologist. Michael opened his laptop and began typing. Diana watched, confused, as he accessed his private accounts and initiated a series of transfers. What are you doing? I'm creating a medical trust fund for Anthony Wilson. $2.5 million, enough for his surgery and ongoing care. The fund will be managed by Denver Children's Hospital, with strict oversight to ensure the money is used exclusively for medical purposes. Diana stared at him in shock. Michael, I don't understand. I'm also setting up educational trusts for Emma and Grace, managed separately. If something happens to me, they'll be protected. But why would you, after everything I've done? Michael closed the laptop and looked directly at Diana. Because those girls upstairs call you Mom and they love you. Because I've watched you care for them, worry about them, celebrate their small victories and comfort their disappointments. Whatever brought you into our lives, what you became while you were here was real. David will never accept this. He wants you to pay for what we've done. To you. David Wilson is currently being detained by federal authorities on outstanding charges. The recordings of his threats against my daughters were enough to secure a warrant. Diana's eyes widened. How did you... I had help. The same help that discovered Anthony's trust fund was activated an hour ago. His surgery is scheduled for next week at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. For several moments, Diana sat in stunned silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. What happens now? Now you have a choice. You can disappear tonight as planned, carrying the knowledge that Anthony will receive, the medical care he needs. Or you can stay for however long you have left and help me figure out how to tell Emma and Grace that their mother figure is sick and that they have a half-brother they've never met. You would do that, after I betrayed you. Michael stood and walked around the desk to where Diana sat. 2 years ago, a woman walked into a charity event and changed my daughter's lives for the better. Whatever her reasons for being there initially, she became the mother those girls needed. She taught them to be brave, to be kind, to believe in themselves. That woman is who I'm talking to right now. Diana looked up at him, tears flowing freely. I don't deserve this kindness. Maybe not. But Emma and Grace deserve to have whatever time remains with the woman they love as a mother, and Anthony deserves to know he has 2 sisters who will want to be part of his life. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted them. Emma appeared in the doorway, her face concerned. Why is Diana crying? Are you two fighting? Before Michael could respond, Grace appeared beside her sister. Diana, are you okay? Diana wiped her eyes and opened her arms. The twins rushed to her and she held them close, breathing in their familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. I'm okay, sweethearts. Your daddy and I were just talking about some grown-up things, but everything is going to be okay. Promise? Grace asked. Diana looked at Michael over the girls' heads, and he nodded encouragingly. I promise that no matter what happens, you will always be loved, and you will always be safe. 6 months later, Michael stood in the garden behind their home, watching Emma and Grace play with their half-brother Anthony, whose recovery had been remarkable. Diana sat in a wheelchair nearby, weaker now but smiling as she watched the 3 children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. The trust funds had been established not just for medical care and education, but for ongoing support. Anthony lived primarily with his paternal grandmother in Philadelphia, but spent summers and holidays in Denver, building relationships with his sisters that would last long after the adults were gone. Diana had insisted on legal documentation that protected Michael's interests while ensuring Anthony's future. She'd also prepared detailed letters for Emma and Grace to be opened on their birthdays, graduations, and other milestones, ensuring her love and guidance would continue to reach them. Do you ever regret it? Diana asked as Michael joined her on the garden bench. Regret what? Choosing forgiveness over justice. Michael watched his 3 children, now inseparable despite their complex family history. I regret that you felt you had no other choice than deception, but I don't regret learning that love doesn't always arrive in the package we expect. Diana reached for his hand. When I'm gone, tell them that loving them taught me who I really wanted to be. Tell them yourself, Michael said gently. Every day you have left. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, the sound of children's laughter filled the garden, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful families are forged not from perfection, but from the courage to choose love over judgment, forgiveness over revenge, and hope over despair.